Yeah.
Okay, welcome. Hi, this is Lori and Lori Frary, and welcome to the show This Week in the Flat Earth. And this is our second episode, so we're still pretty new at this format, but this week we have three of us instead of just two, so, and hopefully it'll continue this way. We'll see how the chemistry goes tonight. And I want to sort of start off the same way every week with some update data in enabling us to compare things as the shows progress week to week, month to month, year to year. Please, God, don't let it be year to year. Okay? So one of the things that I do every week is, or I try to remember to, is I go on YouTube and I search out the words flat and earth, just those two words. And every week the number grows, and some weeks it grows significantly, and then some weeks YouTube catches on to us uploading way too many videos, so they somehow lower the number, and then the next week, poof, it's back up. So this week we went over 600,000 hits on just the words flat earth, and that does include the debunkers out there and anything that has flat earth as a keyword. So, but when I got started 8 months ago, looking at these numbers, it was 75,000. So that's pretty good growth, I would say. So that's that. And then there's also a group that has begun archiving photos and positions of the moon over the coming months, and marking its pattern in different places across the Earth where they live, and where it's tracking more southerly and more northerly from like literally marking it. And so that's going to be something we're going to start to talk about and sort of see what's going on with that. And I hope that individuals in their own yards or someplace where they can mark something and it will stay, to put some kind of a date time marker on the ground where the shadow falls, or find a way to do that, whether it's over your house or a telephone pole or something, just so you can see for yourself how the sun moves northerly and southerly, to just kind of get your mind wrapped around that, because it's something that is highly contentious as far as what maps we're trying to use, how the sun is moving in different parts of the world, and so on. So this is going to be something we're going to talk about in the show later on. The other thing is I just watched a few minutes ago with grinding teeth. Someone called in to Stefan Molyneux's Flat Earth for a while, and it was very interesting that to watch, because I've watched Stefan Molyneux, who is kind of known as the anarchy guy, for several years now, and this is the first time that I had heard him talk about flat Earth. And you know, a lot of people across the flat Earth community and the movement have been sort of waiting with bated breath on all the different celebrity, truther, you know, alternative news movement, watching them to see when and who is going to come forward and claim themselves to be a flat earther finally. So it seems more important than it really is, because the flat Earth is an individual movement. It just so happens to be a community of people who are all moving in the same direction. But the flat Earth is an individualist kind of thing, as well as a collection of people. So it'll be interesting to get some feedback from other people on how they thought Stefan handled himself, and the caller also, because it can be very grueling to listen to somebody try to explain something when you know the answer and you're going, oh, I know this one, and they don't. So okay, so all that being said, my name is Lori Frary. We have Lawrence Wright, and we have the Morgile, also known as Jonathan for the show purposes, but I welcome you to go to all of their channels, Lawrence Wright's channel and the Morgile channel, and then you can see their videos and their work, body of work that they've done. So welcome you guys, and now I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to let Lawrence kick off talking about whatever's on his mind.
Yeah, hi Laura.
The top of your mind.
John, thanks for coming on. It's great to get you on the show because you're the science man in Flat Earth, as I see it. You're the best science man that we have. Now, I've spent a lot of today just looking at time and date, and looking at places at the same line of latitude, north and south. So you could look at 5 degrees north, 5 degrees south, 10 degrees north, 10 degrees south, and I've gone as high as you can get. And then where you've got two places on the same line of latitude, and one was Stanley in the Falkland Islands, which is off the tip of South America, and the other was Oxford in the UK. And if you look at their hours of daylight, 6 months apart, they've both got 747 or 748, and it's the same with every single place where you look at the corresponding latitude in the opposite hemisphere. So it would appear that there is absolute symmetry in the Earth in terms of the sun. So if you look at where they are now, any day of the year, you add these two places together, and it always comes to 24 hours. So if one place has got a very long day, the other place has got a very short day, but together they come to 24. So this is suggesting to me that the North Pole and the South Pole are at opposite ends of the spectrum without a South Pole in the middle, and they've got identical hours of daylight and sunshine, and there is a midnight sun in Antarctica. How does that grab you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I'm not too attached to any particular flat Earth model. Obviously, there isn't any curvature or sphericity to this thing as far as we can tell. So, for all intents and purposes, empirically speaking, it's a plane instead of a globe. And so, when we observe things like the sun, and by the way, I like Stefan Molyneux. I've been, I would say, a fan of his for a good while. So I do like, the way he thinks, and I would be interested to hear how he was, presented with flat Earth and how he reacted to it. But yeah, in terms of the sun, it's really hard to say what we observe is necessarily what the sun is, because obviously we're observing light after it's passed through different layers of magnetic fields and atmosphere, and so it's really, I think it's a little bit naive to necessarily say that the sun is a physical body or the moon is a physical body. I mean, they may be physical bodies, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I have with this AE map is when I got into Flat Earth just under a couple of years ago, I automatically accepted the findings of the unofficial Flat Earth Society, if you know what I mean, because the official one is obviously it's just a controlled opposition group. So this Gleason map, which came out about 2 years ago, I was assuming that was an authentic map, but I'm just wondering how could they have had that map back in 1892, or when it was about 1890s? How could they have that map then before there was any exploration of Antarctica? Do you think that map is genuine? Is it possible that map could have been put together and slipped into the flat Earth community to throw us off our tracks or to reinforce the AE model?
Well,
don't you find it odd that the flat Earth community is using the same map as the United Nations?
Right. Yeah, that's funny.
These people are quite devious, aren't they? So why would they tell us what the exact map would look like?
Right. That's a good point. And I like the Gleason's map. I like the azimuthal equidistant map. But one of the things that I always say, and sort of a caveat that I add, is I'm not claiming that even those are accurate maps. Because as far as I can tell, even those two maps are sort of based off of the relative distances interpreted on the globe model. And so I think that it may be a lot more abstract than that when you actually get a good, full look at the thing. But it is important that we have accurate maps, and those two that I mentioned do seem to be somewhat accurate, or at least, it's a good. I think they're a good way to sort of introduce someone to the flat Earth model and how it works. But one of the most important things about the flat Earth model is it's sort of rough around the edges. And a lot further scrutiny is needed, because everything else that we have in terms of maps and relative distances is a whole lot of assumption, and that's something that I'm just very careful to do anymore. Is I try not to assume anything unless I can kick it like a tire to check its roadworthiness.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the things that bothers me about any of these maps is what are you going to use to compare one with the other? And until we have independent exploration to compare and to critique these maps, we're what are you flying? What is that statement about flying with nothing? It's like flying crazy. So the whole idea is to pick. Is to accept, to pick one, and to define ourselves by one, is to say, okay, this is it, and then what happens, in my opinion, then is when the day comes that the media and whoever starts to have us on TV or starts to have us on Fox News. I mean, I see the day coming, I really do, and then they have their guns loaded, and they have bigger guns than we do because they have all the money, and they have all the background, and they have all the history. And then, somebody comes on and says, this is the map, and they just destroy it in seconds. And then what do you got? You got nothing. So to accept any of these maps, and again, I've seen people being interviewed, the guy who was the missile control guy, trainer guy that was on Mark Sargent's show went on and on about how he believed the maps were wrong, the maps that they were using, the military, and that they were expecting to get somewhere in a certain amount of time, and then it took longer or it took shorter, so they're mucking around in the ocean, sailing nowhere, going in big circles to confuse these people of where they are and where they're going. And that doesn't surprise me at all, because how else are you going to hide that these maps aren't right? But Lawrence, I want you to go back to a minute ago and say I don't want you to come up with a hypothesis or a theory or whatever. It's good enough to say I don't think this map works. But what's your theory? What other opportunity do we have to look at to start to make some comparisons?
Well, if you actually look at the... Go on, John. Do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think if anything good could come of this as sort of a step one, and, I'm of the frame of mind to where I'd be happy to concede the Earth is a spinning globe in infinite space if the evidence supports it. I'm not attached to any model. I personally am leaning towards a flat, sort of concave, disc-shaped flat Earth with basically that's held within an infinite plane, and there could be other worlds adjacent to ours. I think that's very possible. But I guess my point is if we could have ultimately the Antarctic and Arctic treaties abolished or disbanded, that would be step one, so that we can actually, freely navigate to the southern and northern regions, not on a guided tour, not, following GPS, but, following manual navigation and really surveying it. But, going there in the winter, launching weather balloons at night. I mean, there's so many laws, but that sort of prevent us from making certain observations that would be key. But the Antarctic Treaty is a huge, paramount one that I think that until we are able to do that and we're able to get rid of those sort of laws, then we just can't make the necessary observations to really flesh out the model in great detail.
Well, and Lawrence is giving us, numbers from a website that is saying, okay, this day and this day are the same day, but that's a website, and we don't know who runs it, and we don't know who inputs the data, and we don't know where they get it from, and there's so many things we don't know.
You can check where you live,
Right.
and you go on time and date and check where you live, and it will be accurate. I've checked where I live, and it's spot on. And it's the same for other places. Other people have checked this out as well. And north and south, if you're the same latitude, north or south, 6 months apart, you're going to get exactly the same amount of daylight. And the symmetry's there. You go norther and souther, and they're both the same. So just because we can't go any further south, because they won't let us, then if the trend continued, then you're going to get a mirror image of the north or the south, albeit 6 months apart. There is a place that you can go. If anybody's got plenty of money, there's a place called Kerguelen Island. It's one of these research islands, and it's just off Antarctica. And you may be approaching 24 hours of daylight or darkness, depending on what time of the year you go. You have to go on a special boat. I think there's about 2 or 3 a year. It costs quite a bit of money to get on it. But if anybody fancies going to Kerguelen Island, that would be some brilliant research. You could just go down there and get some date stamped images on your mobile phone and bang them up on YouTube.
So what do we have? Two records going like this, and this is the northern and this is the southern hemisphere, and they just sort of, there's got to be a reason why the AE map doesn't work, other than the times and dates, because
the AE map's
I've seen it, and the Tropic of Cancer is small, and the Tropic of Capricorn is large on the AE map, and the equator's in the middle. But all these lines are arbitrary, and they're taken off of the globe map, okay, the globe model.
Yeah, but I think that the latitude that
Earth. Is there like a line there? No, there's no line there. You know what I'm saying? So we're trying to fit a square box into a round hole or something.
Well, we have to use their information for some of the stuff, don't we? We can't come to any conclusions or hypothesis about anything unless you've got some starting information. And the lines of latitude would appear to be bared out by time and date in terms of hours of daylight. It stacks up everywhere you look. Same latitude, same hours of daylight. And then you've got the sundials. On all these maps that we've been given, with a circling sun. So you go on Rob Skiba's YouTube, and he's got his demo of a circling sun. But that simply doesn't work, because the sun is actually moving in a straight line across between Capricorn and Cancer, and in the middle on the equator. Depending on what time of year it is, you're going to get a straight line sun. So the sundial is not going to move around like a clock. So if you've got a straight line sun, how can it be going around in a circle at the same time? It can't be doing both. It's either a straight line or a circle. And the evidence says that it's a straight line. That's why they've got equatorial sundials. They've got a special sundial there that is banked over so that the sun will curve around it.
Well, and the way,
straight line.
The way that I see that too, and I'm familiar with what you're saying, if the sun does follow a curved path around the North Pole, obviously, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that it would take the same amount of time to go around the circle in the winter, unless it was accelerating faster and faster as it became winter in the northern hemisphere, because in the flat Earth model it would have to be going along a much larger circle. So during the summer in the northern hemisphere, it would have to slow down in order for the any model, the flat Earth model, to work. And so that's what really leads me to believe that again, what we see isn't always what we get in terms of the sun, and observable light may be something fairly well removed from the physical sun, if there is such a thing as the physical sun.
Yeah, well, the other things that stack up with the sun moving in a straight line is these chapters from about 70 to 74 on the Book of Enoch, and that's like an operating manual for the sun, moon, and stars. It's saying exactly what they're doing, and they're going through these things they describe as gateways or portholes, and presumably they go through one gateway and they emerge. You know, they start off in the east and end up in the west. So as it reaches the boundaries of the Earth, it re-emerges at the other end as the sunrise.
Well, you know, I've thought about that many times, and I'm not opposed to having somewhat of a supernatural belief about the sun, the moon, the stars, and what's going on in the heavens, because I mean, why do we have to think it's all natural, like we can touch it, feel it, smell it, whatever?
If you call electromagnetic plasma phenomenon supernatural, then yeah. But I mean, it's very possible that the sun could be some type of electromagnetic plasma phenomenon, which, you know, according to our terms, and that, you know, that would be somewhat supernatural. But really, there sort of has to be a natural explanation for all of this, and I agree with you guys that you know, the conventional flat Earth models, especially, you know, some of the maps that we use, are just not accurate, and I've really sort of adhered to that for the duration, because again, it's almost as if we're taking globe Earth relative distances and just sort of making that work on a flat Earth map. So that, to me, that's problematic.
It's problematic to me as well, because there's no way to explain. I mean, I've seen a lot of situations where something that works on the globe also works on the flat Earth. They just have a different explanation for why they both work. Okay, and I also understand how they created the globe with sort of ad hoc reverse engineered theories that if then, you know, I can explain this away, and so I can see how they accomplished that. And as time went by and people questioned different factors of what they came up with, then that calls for another ad hoc reverse engineered theory to support the one that you guys are questioning. So as time went by, everything got a little supernatural, because now we're flying through space, and now we're vortexing, and now we're, you know, 93 million miles, and all of these distances to make things work, and the tilt and the axis and all of those things to make it work. But yet, when you start to disassemble all of those things, you want to try to fill in the blanks or put those puzzle pieces in to make a different puzzle out of it. You know, well, we still have these same puzzle pieces. Now we have to make it work for flat. And, you know, that whose responsibility is that? You know, that's not just one person's responsibility. It's like everybody's trying to create the definitive model that counters the globe. And there's just not enough information to be able to do that. There's not enough data. And so people are just, you know, coming up with, well, what ifs? And then that sounds good to somebody, like concave, for example, or the one I heard about that was like a tube. We live on a tube, and the ends are open, and there's like a toroid. I mean, I've heard so many theories now that I'm completely baffled that we've stuck with the one that we've had for so long, because there's a lot of really good, cool sounding theories out there. Okay, but at the same time, in order to truly sell this, and I, you know, I'm not trying to market flat Earth, and none of us should be, but in order to compensate for the answer parroted responses that we're getting back from those debunker types, the globe lickers, as you know, they've been starting to be called, you know, it's a new show, Stump the Flat Earther. And well, that's not that hard to do when you don't have a map to go by even.
Well, you know, one thing that I like to say to that is because the globe Earth model is very complex, and there's a lot of elements to it that have been sort of theorized and almost carved into stone as fact over the years. And it's like how can I put this? It's almost like I struggle whether if the whole globe Earth model is a series of lies or a series of logical misunderstandings, because it's almost as if in some respects it is a very logical conclusion to come to that we live on a spinning globe, and there's lots of different ways that it's been proved. But now that we have modern technologies, for example, the ability to communicate across long distances instantly and to chart things all over the world simultaneously, and then of course we have flight. We know all sorts of things about electromagnetism that just none of these technologies were around during the Newtonian era. And if you really sit down and think about it, all of our physics is based on Newtonian physics. And when you bring electromagnetism into into these topics, for example, gravity, there are other explanations. And now that we have the ability as individuals to send weather balloons up 40 miles into the air, and there isn't any curvature of the Earth, and the horizon, meets your eye at eye level, even at those altitudes, there's basic fundamental evidence that leads you to the conclusion that it couldn't possibly be a spinning sphere. And so then you have to go back and revisit all of these different proofs of the globe, and they really do start to fall apart. Then you'll get a theoretical physicist that's, that says, well, what about, this thing that I'm really attached to? But at the end of the day, even basic astronomy disproves the heliocentric model. For example, the North Star Polaris being visible well below the equator just simply couldn't happen on a globe in any case. So again, not to ramble on too much, but it is a logical misunderstanding, I think the globe is, and only with real empirical basic evidence do we see it couldn't possibly be a globe. So we really have to come up with alternative theories and alternative explanations for the celestial bodies and even our own existence.
Well, and then we have, those who say, but, what about the pictures from space? And so each one of these elements that we have to deal with calmly and with logic, and they're going to come up with another question and another question and another question. Again, it's not everyone's responsibility to understand and be able to regurgitate back. Some of us are smoother at it than others as far as, getting the new idea of flat Earth and how it works in our mind, and to be able to say that back to somebody when they question something. But not everybody's good at that. And so they stumble along and they have to rely on other people's videos and other people's blogs and websites. And here's a link, and here's another link, and here's another link, and everybody's like, no, I don't want any links. What do you know? Okay? So we're at that sort of crossroads where, and I've said this since I came in. I like to sort of have my shit together. If I'm going to sit down and I'm going to talk to somebody about flat Earth, for example, or what I call the flat chat, okay, I have a certain expectation of what their questions are going to be. And there's probably 20 or 30 classic questions, and one usually leads to the next. But when certain questions are answered, like how does the sun work? Well, that's not like, oh yeah, well let me just tell you how the sun works. Be like, oh, I got it all figured out. And since nobody does, or the moon, or the stars, or any of the other stuff up there that's too far away for us to actually touch, feel, see, smell. And so with these what I try to do, what I try to help people with is, how do you confidently answer people with certain, answer certain questions that you don't have a background, a knowledge, a history of understanding. Like a lot of people are, instantly they're spherical trigonometrists because they know 8 inches, times squared the miles is the curvature that should be expected. and then they'd get the calculator out, and then they'd come up with the number, and in this many feet, that many miles, this should happen. And since it doesn't happen, okay, the automatic first thing is, well, I question your math, period. Now I question your math because your math's wrong, because that doesn't happen, and I don't see that. You know, the boat went over the horizon, and the bottom went first, and so that's how it works, and that's curvature. So that's the frustrating part of the science of the flat Earth. And, you know, I am not a science mind. You know, I kind of am learning to be compared to, you know, my younger years, because now I'm questioning everything, and I'm having to unlearn a lot of stuff and then relearn it, and I'm having to understand what I'm learning. So if you, both you guys, either of you guys, okay, we talked about the maps, we talked about the sun, you know, how do you confidently have the flat chat with somebody when you're sort of new? Because I run a group on Facebook. I'm 20 new people every day coming in, and they all have different information, and it's so frustrating because, oh no, you know, blah blah blah, it's concave, and then oh no, it's this, and it's, you know, and then everybody starts infighting, and that's part of what is exciting about flat Earth, because people are talking about something they've never talked about before. How do you approach answering questions that you don't have answers to?
Well, one way that I do it is if you can prove the basic fundamentals of the Earth being a stationary plane, it couldn't possibly be a sphere, and it's not spinning, and there's good evidence for that. Then anything beyond the basic proofs, I tell that person, you're the expert in that field, you figure it out. You know, debunk it with your field, or see if it works in the flat Earth model. And if it works in the flat Earth model, a lot of times what people find is that whatever the idea is, it actually works better in the flat Earth model and makes a lot more sense. For example, the Coriolis effect is a big one, where the Coriolis effect really doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the spinning globe Earth model. But if you look at the so-called Coriolis effect, even on the azimuthal equidistant map, it makes a lot more sense than it does on a globe. So that's how I handle that a lot, and I'm really sort of far behind on replying to comments and emails and such here lately. But there was a good time when I'd go back and forth in YouTube comments and such with people and try to answer all their questions. And ultimately what I did was just started making videos to answer a lot of those questions, and so that was helpful to me. But at the same time, if there's something that I sort of understand, but there's an expert on the subject questioning it, I tell them, well, figure it out. How does it work on the flat Earth model? And a lot of times that will actually make a person go in and look at it. And when you're studying the truth is sort of infectious in its own way, and so that person may very well become an avid flat earther.
Yeah, there's lots of new people joining these groups, and I think quite a lot of them, they haven't done much research, so they've got a limited knowledge. And you've got some people who've been doing it a long time, and people in the middle, so you've got a right mixed bag. But I think the Facebook community is probably going to get split at some point between those who think there's a dome and those who think there's an infinite plane. Obviously the dome, people don't like it because we're still enclosed, and the infinite plane, people do like it because there may be some pristine land beyond the ice where we could all move and build your own home and have access to all the natural resources at nil cost. And I'm sure if that is the truth, they'll do their damnedest to stop us going there. I was looking at Admiral Byrd today, and he actually made 5 trips to Antarctica, about 2 years, and each one starting in 28, going through to 56. And if all he found was the edge of the dome, he must have found it the first years. He was there for 2 years. You know, if they spent 2 years there, why would they go back? You know, and every time they go back, they take more men. And I think they were probably mapping out the area where, you know, some new land beyond which is known to us. They were mapping it out, and there may well be people living there now. A lot of the people that go missing on Earth. They, you know, famous people, they may be having a life over in there as a reward for their services to the Illuminati in the movie industry and the you know, the music industry. It's,
George W. Bush is king of the Antarctic, I'm sure.
yeah.
Well, okay, so let's go there. Okay, let's just go there. Who?
Yeah.
I want to know what you guys think. Are you a domer or are you an infinite planer? Because it's coming down to that. And I'm already on record. I'm a no domer. So and I've made multiple videos about beyond the dome and where's the dome and dome or no dome. I mean, all of it. So tell me what you think. What is your hypothesis on whether there's more or whether there's a wall and they just don't want us to find it? Or is there aliens over there and they're protecting us from them? Or what do you think?
Yeah, Lawrence, me.
Yeah, you go on, John.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I tend to think it's probably an infinite plane. There's probably way more land out there beyond the Antarctic. I don't think there's any sort of physical dome. I think if there is any dome tendency to our atmosphere, it would be due to electromagnetic fields as opposed to a physical glass or steel dome. But, you know, I'm just for the truth. And I think that it's important to point out that there's good evidence that it couldn't possibly be a sphere. There's good evidence that NASA has been lying and stealing from us. And especially in America, I don't know about other countries, but we've got just huge, just gobs and gobs, trillions of dollars a year just disappearing basically in black budget projects and the like. And I'd pretty much bet my bottom dollar that at least the United States governments are fairly well entrenched into the outer edge. And but you know, if new evidence leads me to another conclusion, then I'm just simply for the truth. But you know, we sort of do like we have our models that we like to lean towards, and me personally, I just don't see the militaries of the world going to such great lengths to hide the world's simple flatness. But I do see them building a perimeter around the outer world that we are basically imprisoned from.
Okay, so two of the things that people use a whole lot and are using a whole lot right now to endorse the dome, and that is sundogs and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
Does either one of those things affect your belief at all?
If the atmosphere is sort of not forced but compelled to maintain its container, and that container is at least half of an electromagnetic field, or probably more of a complex electromagnetic field than we truly understand. But it makes a lot of sense to me that that atmosphere would take a dome-like or a bell-like shape, even in a infinite plane model. And I don't think that it's scientifically justified to say that because of rainbows or because of sundogs, then there must be a physical dome in the sky. I think that's jumping to conclusions. I think that there's evidence that the atmosphere is somehow contained or compelled into a dome-like shape, but to me, that's all that indicates scientifically, empirically.
All right, Lawrence, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if it was a dome, then and Admiral Byrd actually found a physical edge of a dome, one that you could see and touch, then they wouldn't have been firing missiles up. They'd just plant some high explosives if they wanted to get through it. Plant some high explosives by the side of the dome in Antarctica and blast a hole through there. What would the point of being sending rockets where you can't even see whether they're going to reach or not? You could apply an explosion directly onto the surface of the dome. That would make more sense.
Some people say that they tried that Operation Fishbowl, and trying to blow holes in it, and it didn't work, and that's why they created CERN, was to blow a different kind of hole in it. So, I mean, they got an answer for everything. Trust me.
Well, those Operation Fishbowl clips looked like cartoons to me. I personally, I don't just gobble up and take at face value anything that the U.S. government presents, including the documentary evidence of Admiral Byrd's missions. Obviously, the military and the government are going to show us what they want us to believe whether that is true or not is irrelevant. And there's actually been pretty good evidence that that even nuclear technology in the form of nuclear bombs, that all may be a hoax, and I'm compelled to think that that's very possible.
Ditto on that. Okay, so
Yeah.
so Lawrence, what's out there in your opinion? What do you speculate?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that there's some pristine land beyond there. Obviously, how much we wouldn't know, but I think there's some pristine land, and I think people, famous names, they probably go there because I think that's where Admiral Byrd went. You know, he was a really fit as a butcher's dog. His brothers lived like 10 years older than him. I mean, you know, the guy kept himself in very good shape. I think he went. You know, he spent 10 years there anyway. He probably thought, "Well, this is a fabulous place. I'm going to retire here. I'm not going to stay, you know, in America. I'm going to go to somewhere that's not been spoilt."
So why am I thinking about the plot of Atlas Shrugged, for example, where the big corporatists took off and checked out of society and went off to I'm thinking mountains of Colorado and disappeared and had their utopia there. So is that kind of where you're leaning?
Well, I think that, you know, they've probably got places like that, you know, on this earth, but you know, there may be even better places that we haven't yet you know, seen. And if you think about it, we've got on this planet, sorry, on the earth, you've got 1% of the people owning 99% of the wealth. All the land is in somebody's ownership. So if there was more land beyond that nobody owned, do you think people would stay here if they had the choice? You know, if you wanted to build a house and start a new life, it'd be like discovering America again, wouldn't it? People would say, right, that's it, I'm going to the new lands. I'm going over the ice wall.
The Queen of England, okay, what do you guys speculate the Queen of England is worth, or the royal family? And then add to that, the sun never sets on the British Empire, and so on and so forth. So if you had trillions, of course, you would be the one who sort of, you know, bought up, took over, controlled. But that would have to be a ploy by the 1%. Would all have to sit around a little table or big table and agree with that plot. And because, I mean, literally, they have, when you look at the map of Antarctica where they have it divided up, like who controls what part, you know, this is New Zealand, and this is UK, and this is America, and everybody's got their little pie slice, okay? And then it's like, okay, what defines that little middle spot where all the pie pieces come together, and who stands guard over that? Don't you come over on my pie part, you know, okay? Because we know that doesn't exist, that circle cut into pie places. So, but if you invert that and you know, have maybe an ice ring on the outside of some kind, or a very large continent that we don't know about, okay? And then you invert these pie pieces, because we know that they have different outposts all around that so-called island or continent. When one of them makes some stupid comment about, well, what about blah blah blah, and it's like, rah, poor people. So I'm seeing the not the 100th monkey effect, but the 5 monkey effect. Do you know about the 5 monkey story? The 5 monkey experiment?
I've heard
the 5 monkey experiment. Okay, so they have a ladder. They put 5 monkeys in a room, and they have a ladder. And on top of the ladder, they put some bananas. Okay, and when the monkey goes up the ladder to get the bananas, they spray the other monkeys with cold water. And the next time the monkey tries to go up the ladder to get the banana, they spray all the other monkeys with the cold water. And over a little bit of time, the monkeys don't go up the ladder anymore, because they associate that going up the ladder is going to get you hosed with the cold water. And then they take out one monkey and they introduce a new monkey that doesn't know about this. And of course, the new monkey is going to go up the ladder and he's going to try to get the bananas, and all the other monkeys get hosed with the cold water. So as the experiment progresses, each time a new monkey is introduced and one is taken out, the first guy who comes and tries to go up the ladder gets beat the crap out of by the other monkeys because they know that they're going to get hosed with cold water. They don't know why, because they weren't there at the beginning to know what happened at the beginning of the experiment. So over time, the conditioning is about just don't go up the ladder, and it doesn't matter why you don't, just don't do it. And the others prevent the new person from doing it. So the 5 monkey effect is happening sort of in reverse here, and that is it's becoming already that if you're a flat earther and you're a flat earther for very long, you start to feel smarter than the rest of the people who don't know it yet. And as time goes by, it becomes sort of a not a herd mentality and not a follower culture thing, but everybody wants to be cool. Everybody wants to be thought of as being cool. Nobody wants to be thought of as being an outsider, an outcast, a nerd, or whatever. And in all these different walks of life around the world, in every culture and in every group, somebody is considered cool, okay? And everyone wants to emulate that person or be not the least cool person. So I see this quickly flipping to where it's cooler to be a flat earther than it is to be a globe person, okay? And once that sort of starts to happen to where you feel stupid if you're not with the in crowd of flat earthers, then you're going to want to be a flat earther too. You may not do the research. You may be like one of the new monkeys that comes in and just does what all the other monkeys do, but sooner or later you're going to sort of pick it up by osmosis, and it's going to become sort of this viral new version of learning, of education, because the old version is all based in lies. And so why would you take the time to learn the old version? The new kids, the young kids that are in school aren't learning anything. I mean, you look at this new math and you look at these new the new education methods that are not only just rote methods of repetition, but also just learn so you can pass the test. It doesn't matter if you actually understand it or anything, right? So I believe that the tipping point's going to happen in a grassroots way. I don't care if this thing started out as a psyop created by the government or not. I've heard that one too. If it was, thank you very much, because it in fact is flat. And for whatever reason that you got it started, and for whatever reason that you thought that you could win this on the back end, I don't think that you are, because I think that the truth will out. The mentality of people is changing. People that are angry, mean, nasty, unnice people are sort of, we don't like you anymore, and the cool thing is to be nice and to be, namaste and Ubuntu and all that. So that's my rant. That's the only one I'm going to have in the whole thing.
If it does come out on a worldwide basis, I nearly said global then, if truth does come out worldwide, do you think the powers that be, the authority, whatever you want to call them, are they going to come clean and say, all these stars and planets, they're just little twinkling lights that are, a few hundred miles away?
No, because I think we're going to pull the rug out from under them. I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to realize that we don't need them anymore. We never needed them. We don't need their government. We don't need their rules. We don't need their armies and their wars and their banksters and their GMO foods and their bad health care. We don't need any of that. People all over the world are already rejecting the system. They don't even understand that they're doing it. I'm not going to eat the GMOs. Look at those chemtrails. I mean, they're awakening to whatever it is that affects them. And if their house gets foreclosed on, they get in there and they start learning about those banksters. I'll guarantee you every single person out there knows about the fake money system once they lose their home to foreclosure and they're on the street, or they have somebody in their family that does. Because one of the things you don't hear anymore, and you just heard this 5 years ago, okay, those lazy people who, you didn't deserve a mortgage to begin with. You lost your home because you overbought, or you were greedy and wanted a better house than you could afford. You don't hear that anymore, do you? When was the last time you heard that? Think about it. Okay, so they know that didn't work. That people knew people who lost. Everybody knows somebody that lost their home to foreclosure. There's 8 empty houses in America for every homeless person out on the street right now. So sooner or later, people figure stuff out, and they are.
So how would you think the mechanism would work to remove all these people from power, and we have a nice place to live once more? How's that going to happen?
One day, and I've been saying this for probably 8 years. One day, people will realize what would happen if all of us just finally got together and didn't pay our taxes. What would happen if all of a sudden one day all of us got together and said, sorry, this month we're not paying our mortgage. None of us. Okay? Imagine what happens when the powers that be go, oh my God, they know. And so all it is, the power has been in our hands all along. It's like the Wizard of Oz and the Dorothy thing and the click your heels together and poof, you're back in Kansas. We've had the power all along. Anytime we wanted to say, all of us, that we weren't going to pay our tax, there's going to be some goober, some person who sucks up to authority no matter what happens, okay? Well, they're going to go be the dummy that's going to pay their taxes. But
when enough people get involved in this, it really should be pretty easy to get it started. And really, step one has to start with the Federal Reserve. And 10 years ago, if you would have asked 100 people, what's the Federal Reserve Bank, they'd say, oh, well, that's the government bank where they print our money, if they even knew that much. But now if you ask 100 people, I'm willing to bet at least 10 or 20 of them will say, well, it's a private conglomerate of corporations that print fiat currency and loan it to our government at interest, which all of that is very much unconstitutional. And they've sort of, slickly edged it into law over the last, a little over 100 years. And so as easily as they got it in, and they did some pretty shady stuff to get the Federal Reserve Act passed, but it should be easier for us to get rid of it. And you even look at certain politicians are anti-Federal Reserve, and they don't get the media attention that they should. But I think that if we get enough people, awareness is key. It should be pretty easy. Now there are a lot of people involved in very high up upper echelons of society, and they've got their henchmen and they've got their puppets. But when you take the financial aspect away from them, they really do start to lose their power. And I think that's key. I mean, that's critical.
Oh, it's absolutely critical, because money is power and power gets money. I mean, they go together. You don't get one without the other. And so we all know that they've been siphoning off the money slowly but surely, and they've been converting fake money into real assets, and they've been doing all that stuff. They've been buying land by the hundreds of thousands of acres and so on and so forth. But that is why the control system that we have is so fake, and yet most people, until something happens to them that throws them into that system where they have to fight it or learn about it or deal with it in some way. I mean, lose your license, for example, and it doesn't take very long, your driver's license. And it doesn't take very long before you go, God, I never want that to happen again. If I can ever get my license back, I don't ever want to lose my license again. Well, it's the same thing with everything that has to do with the system. And the people that run the system and operate the system on a day-to-day basis all know how crappy it is, and how they can't believe themselves that they don't even know what's gluing it together. I mean, you ask people who are off the grid, and I know a lot of them. I've been a dissident for a long time, and they all have black market jobs, meaning they started little cottage businesses or whatever. They don't pay any income taxes. They don't buy licenses. They don't, do all of that stuff, the grid stuff. They don't do all of that. They just make some cash money, and they buy their food and they pay their rent or whatever it is, and they're not a part of the system as for the most part. And they know, they understand. But then you've got these bigger percentage of the population who that they fear authority figures. They literally fear them. And you know, when I was growing up, you were taught to respect authority figures. You were taught to respect, you know, the mayor and the cops and the, you know, the firemen and anybody who, the president and all those people. What a joke that turned out to be. And so now they're so inclined to fall in under authority that when you question the flat Earth, for example, they're like, well, you know, what about the globe? And my teacher taught me, and what about all the figures that I memorized in the 93,000 miles for the sun, and then what about all that? Throw it all out. Well, what do I replace it with? Why you got to replace it with anything? It's lies. The truth will fill in the gap. It may be a void area you will never know, but you will at least know that you're not falling for a lie anymore. And then one day, I guarantee you, people will be interested enough that they'll sail the seas and they'll go in boats and they'll literally measure the distance from point A to point B and put it on a map, and then we'll know.
Well, and it's
right?
in nature, you know, that's why I, you know, really feel strongly for an infinite plane model, not just because the evidence is there to support it, but you know, it's within our nature to want to know what's beyond any sort of border or any sort of edge, so to speak. And you know, and what they did was very slick, because they took that pioneering spirit and they sort of psychologically capped it off at the bottom of the globe. And so it's almost like a hamster wheel for our mind. If we don't know that there's possibly more land out there or options to this world, which there may be, then we're sort of prisoners of our own device, and they really don't need to do much to reinforce it. I mean, the educational system's there to do that, and NASA's there to, you know, catch anyone that may stray. And then, of course, you've got astrophysicists and astronomers, where their observations work really on either model. So
and you've got Dancing with the Stars, and you've got the football game, right?
Anyway, yeah, we had Operation Telescope last week, John, which was I managed to get together 1,500 email addresses and names of astrophysicists and astronomers, and we've got some replies in. I'm just going to read a quick reply out, and maybe you can pass comment on what this guy was saying, John. See what your take on it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear, you were telling me about that, and I'd love to hear how some of them responded.
Well,
right,
before you read the response, please, Lawrence, tell everybody what they're responding to, what you did.
All right. Well, here's one here. Okay, so this went to one of the professors at Princeton University. I'm not going to give their names in case anybody complains, but the question was, as someone who is interested in astronomy, I would be interested to know your views on the recent image of Pluto from NASA. See attached image. It is clear to see that this image has the exact shape of the Walt Disney character Pluto, the dog. The question was, do you think NASA are only pretending to go into outer space? I look forward to your reply. Kind regards. And then the reply comes back and it says this: yes, I am totally convinced that NASA have nothing better to do than spend $18 billion making sure that planet Pluto can be used in a Disney marketing campaign. You don't pretend to do science. There is no upside to doing so. And if one's motivation were to hoodwink the world for profit, then all scientists will become politicians and all management consultants. Thankfully, most scientists have more integrity. So that looks like the people know that NASA are lying about stuff, but they don't know why they're lying.
Yeah.
Well, it also was a pretty clever tongue-in-cheek, meaning you could take this either way.
Yeah, okay.
Did you kind of get that, Morgile?
Yeah, I kind of think he was being a little bit facetious.
Flippant,
And, you know,
yeah.
the funny thing is I've had actually astrophysicists ask me, how is NASA making any money off of these, films that I'm purporting that they're making, which that's all they really have ever given us are films, maybe some telemetry and such. But yeah, how is NASA making money? Well, NASA gets over $18 billion every year, and that's even after it's been, transferred over to a private sector business, so to speak. And so, yeah, there's a crap ton of money involved in pseudoscience, especially if you're NASA.
For real.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I think that's interesting, though, that they're responding. Okay.
All right. Take a listen to this one. This one,
Lawrence.
this,
that picture with Pluto, was that an actual picture from NASA, or that was just like a hoax, a little meme?
No, that's an official NASA photograph. It's stamped with NASA's, source data. You can go onto NASA's website and see the picture of Pluto with Pluto on it.
Okay.
And that's how ridiculous
You don't
it is.
see the cartoon image overlaid, no, but you.
Well, no, because I've seen the picture, and I didn't do any research into it. I just assumed that it was a hoax.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was actually a NASA image.
It's a real NASA image, and if you go on NASA's website, you will see Pluto with the shape of Pluto, which fits exactly the image of the dog, even its nose and its ears. That's how bad it is.
That's funny.
And this is another reply from Princeton University. We actually asked this guy 13 different questions. The last one, which was, he obviously read it all because he replied to the last question, and he was asked how would he feel if he spent his whole lifetime studying the stars and space and planets and stuff like that, if he were to find out that he'd been looking at the ceiling, something a few hundred miles up that wasn't a gazillion light years away, and he'd been wasting his time and his whole career had been a waste. Just let me plug this in a bit more. Here we go. Sorry, I've got my power back on. Anyway, this is the guy's reply. He said, this is a professor from Princeton University. He said, hello friend, I study the stars and space, whether you think science is real or not, because they are beautiful, and I have found my studies of the stars and space to be fascinating, stimulating and fulfilling. Even if there were just one star in the sky, I would continue to study that star because I love what I study. Even if the sky were just a ceiling, I would continue to study that ceiling because I love what I study. And he goes on and on and on. He writes a book. He writes about 1,000 words, saying you shouldn't believe what you see on YouTube. So some people are sort of totally buried in official science, and doesn't matter what you say, they're going to stick with their preconceived views of how the world is.
Did you ask him how much he makes a year for those? I would study this would he study it for free if he loves it so much?
Because Laurie, I had a student help him. He compiled this database, and he was going on all these websites for the universities, and it says against some of the professors how much money they get as grants each year to study this stuff, and some of them are getting $5 and $10 million. And that's just one person in a huge department.
Well,
so
don't you remember the guy, the team that made like millions of dollars studying cow flatulence, for methane, whatever?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
His response
oh, you know what, Morgile? Let me ask you something, John. If you were given one of these grants, let's just say $100,000, because to you or I that'd probably be a boatload. You don't need millions. What for studying something scientific for the flat Earth? What would maybe to make a documentary about your study? What would you do with it?
That's a good question. I think that really the most important thing to do is to really map the southern hemisphere, the far southern hemisphere, because in doing that we can tell a lot, and that would personally satisfy me, in terms of shape and nature of the world, and also just go south and keep going. That would be another thing. I guess I'm a southward kind of guy. When America was founded, it was manifest destiny, which is going from east to west, all the way from sea to shining sea. And that's sort of how people are. We want to know what's out there beyond that river, what's out there behind that mountain. what's out there beyond the Antarctic. You know, if it turns out that I'm on a polar cap at the bottom of a sphere, which I highly doubt is the case, but then that's great. Then I'll know. If we can sail, 20,000 miles going due west and still don't make it all the way around, then then we know. But until then it's too many questions, and I'm just so sick of the unknowns. I just want to know certain things for sure, and I think the far southern hemisphere would have a lot of those answers.
Well, I've asked that question to several different people, and the higher percentage are all about studying Antarctica and exploring, freely exploring. And because look at it this way: if you sailed a boat across the Atlantic to let's say the coast of Africa, okay, and you just wanted to do like a Forrest Gump walking thing. You know how Forrest Gump in the movie, he started out one side and he walked all the way across to the other ocean, and you wanted to traverse the African continent, you would not be able to.
Right.
Politically and militarily and so on, you would be stopped because there would be a country with a border check or whatever. So you couldn't map it if you wanted to.
Right.
So it's not just north and south and east and west. It's now we're so broken up into boundaries and countries and flags and passports and everything else that's another part of the prison, part of the trap. It's a mental trap as well as a physical one. And I read recently that they're actually starting to talk about bridging the gap, the 55-mile gap between the Bering Strait of Alaska and Russia. Mm-hmm. And I laughed actually when I was reading about this, because that's all that separates the countries is this 55-mile little slice of water. And over all of these hundreds of years, I can't believe nobody ever did build a bridge across there. One thing is because it's a whole nother day over there with 55 miles apart. And second, you literally could go from South America to South Africa by motor, by land, coming up and over and back down again. And so it would combine the world, the continents together. And one of the things that I was, thinking about with, other than the fact that I made so much fun of Sarah Palin for saying I can see Russia from my house. I'm like, oh God, on a clear day you could see 55 miles across there. Damn, she wasn't as stupid as I thought. And so
right, but that somehow gave her credibility as an ambassador, because she could see Russia from her house, which was sort of funny in itself.
It was a big faux pas, regardless of how it came out. But anyway, I mean, you literally are in another day when you if you would cross this bridge. So the economics would be affected, okay? Because you literally wouldn't have to make a phone call to bet on something going on the next day. You literally could time travel. And so somebody would have to do something about the time mapping, blah, blah, blah. But think about that there's this vast, half the globe space that's covered by the Pacific Ocean and the oceans. And very few people have ever sailed all the way across there because it takes a long time, and they have shipping lanes, and they put pirates. See, now here's a conspiracy theory for you. They created the pirates whole thing to keep the people afraid so that they would stay in the shipping lanes and wouldn't go outside of that.
Yeah, and it also justified, big budgets going towards, certain governmental bodies that were in charge of combating. It's the same thing with the war on drugs. Of course, the CIA is having a war on drugs, so what do? They ship in a ton of cocaine and heroin, so they have, something to fight against. It's the same thing, and yeah, the skull and bones certainly doesn't hurt that argument. So yeah, I do tend to. I've sort of entertained that line of thought, and it does make a lot of sense.
So here's this amazing amount of water space, okay, that is not only flat, because we know water doesn't stick to a ball, but a lot more uncharted than people would like to believe or like to understand, I believe. And to go into Antarctica from that direction where there is no other landmass nearby, because everybody knows, you know, you got to have fuel, or you got to have rations or food and water and so on and so forth, and there's only so much of that you can carry on an independent boat. So the map itself has this, in my opinion, has this giant void area of water that could be anything. I mean, there could be a landmass somewhere in there that we don't know about, okay? And when you tear apart the map and you make it this, you know, azimuthal equidistant map, do you say muthal or muthal? What do you say? I say muthal.
I think you can say it either way, but it's M-U-Th, so I guess muthal, muthal.
Muthal sounds funny to me, but that's okay. It sounds sort of Dr. Seuss or something. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so here's this gargantuan amount of space, but when you put it on the AE map, then Africa comes down here, and South America comes down here, and, you know, Australia's and New Zealand's over here, but there's still a whole lot of space in between. And so I'm not saying they're hiding land there, they're hiding the ways that you get into Antarctica, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, and, you know, going on what you're saying, too, just look at South America. You know, we've uncovered and sort of made tourist traps out of the, you know, the Mayan, the pyramids in South America and things like that. But from what I remember, only something like 10% of those have been sort of uncovered and documented, and there's really just tons and tons of this whole world, this whole ancient world right in South America that's just sitting there, you know, covered with jungle. And so if we're not even able to, you know, to map that out and to explore that and to really figure out, you know, because when the Roman Catholic Church came, they burned all of their, you know, I guess books or whatever, but they basically destroyed their culture. And there's probably a lot of lost ancient knowledge right there in South America, but we can't even get to that. And
and they, you know, burned down the library at Alexandria and so on and so forth. There's missing links that are there's no way to fill it in. And then not too long ago, of course, I run into a video made by a woman who says that they've added 1,000 years to our timeline, that it's actually only 1015 instead of 2015. And, you know, the minute I started hearing that, I was like, oh, come on now, even I can't go there. And then, but I listened more and I thought, you know, why not? Of course it's possible that most of the history prior to 1,000 years ago is oral and passed down from generation to generation, and who knows what they could have inserted in there. And like Lawrence says with this Gleason map, who knows who faked that nice map that's a well-paid art faker, and they snuck it in. Let's just sneak it in right here. And then, oh, look at there, look what we found. You know, it's the same thing with the Smithsonian. There could be stuff buried in there that we have no idea. The basement of the Vatican, who knows what's in there, right?
Well, everybody's focusing on Antarctica, saying that's the place to go to find out how it really is. But if the maps are wrong, then you might equally be able to go to the North Pole, or what's known as the North Pole, and there may be a similar access point to leave this Earth there. You know, it depends which map we're looking at. But if you look at the azimuthal, it's in the centre. But if you look at the map that makes most sense in terms of the sun, then you could just head north. You know, you could. I don't know whether you could get there without going over any seas, but you go to the most northern parts of Greenland. Where's that going to take you? Is that going to take you to the North Pole? You could probably do that on foot if you had, enough supplies to do it. You wouldn't need to have a boat to get there.
Well, you know, let's go like this. If I was a creator and I wanted to have some place where I didn't want you to go, and you're humans and you freeze to death, I would make it cold. I would either make it really cold or I would make it really hot, and then you can't go there, okay? You can't live there, and you can't, go there for very long until the day came that you had developed the technology to be able to physically go there, or to send a drone over there, like a fly little drone, and show us what you got. Who knows what is beyond? And I was one of the first people, probably kids in the world, who the first thing I did when I could crawl was go stick my finger in a light socket, just because you told me I shouldn't do that. Okay.
Yep.
Well, at least you didn't put your tongue on it.
Yeah, it hurts and it knocks you on your butt, but it doesn't really kill you. So.
And you wake up under a table.
Yeah. So, I'm a little explorer, and I always ask questions. I always want to know. I'm sorry, go ahead. I talked over you.
Yeah, when I was about 8 years old, this guy made me put my tongue on an electric wire, and then he turned the power on, and that was pretty awesome, yeah. Because he's wet, he's a whole lot worse.
Yeah, that's as bad as the Christmas Story where they told the kid to stick his tongue on the frozen flagpole. So the idea should be that everybody should want to know, not only know the truth, but what's happened to our explorer thing. Here's what's happened. They've created a serendipitous, or that's not the right word, a fake way to fulfill that need, or that wanderlust, by doing the whole fake NASA going to space and planets and galaxies and all that stuff, and people live vicariously their need to explore by going on these sites and going, oh, I see them. I was like, I can't believe these people are like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Oh my God, that's so wonderful. This fake ISS station going around taking time-lapse photography of going over the Earth with the lights twinkling and everything. You can't even see those from a plane at 30,000 feet. How is that ISS seeing them from however far it is up there, going 17,500 miles an hour? Come on, okay? But yet, oh, look, it's so cool. Oh, let's suck up to the reality TV show known as the Astronauts on the ISS space station, right?
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of forms of entertainment that don't even necessarily have anything to do with NASA. I mean, yes, obviously, very much so, NASA does exactly what you just said. That's a very good point. But even, like, speaking for my generation, things like video games have sort of been, put there for us to, it's almost like a virtual pseudo-reality, especially at this point, to where you get so immersed in things that are, not real in any real sense. And they've done a very good job of sort of keeping us entertained in order to, perpetuate the status quo. And in movies, think of all the space exploration sci-fi movies there are out there. There's hundreds of them, and yeah, they've exactly done that. They've taken our our pioneering exploratory spirit, that whole manifest destiny thing, and basically put us on a virtual hamster wheel with NASA and entertainment, football games and video games.
Exactly, and reality TV shows. I mean, to me, I watch a few minutes of that ISS, that Kelly guy and whoever. I don't even know all their names because I don't care. But I will, and I'm like, that dude's hanging upside down. He's not in floating around in space. Look how red his face is getting. Look how his cheeks are like hanging up here, and his clothes don't look like they're hanging right. What's the matter with you people? That's upside down, suspended in air, and all you gotta do is flip the camera around and show it to us. And people go, what are you talking about? How can I see this? You can't see this, okay? How do we know that they're not in an underground bunker somewhere with films of Earth being shown outside that stupid window of theirs? And you know, this guy's bragging because he's the longest person been in space. What is it, a year? And meanwhile, his twin brother is wandering around going, yeah, you know, I'm not really him and he's not really me, and you know, we're twins. And yet no one questions, you know, they don't question it until you shock them. He's like, I want to get a shock prod thing and go, aren't they hanging upside down, you dummy? Look at their clothes are like hanging with the wires. Oh, come on, how are they flying through? Have you not seen a green screen movie? I mean, what's the matter with you? Why is that not CGI, but all this, oh, it looks so real? Okay.
Well, we do, I don't know if you guys have ever watched, but I do a show with Jaronism every Monday and Tuesday, but on Tuesdays we do just 2.5, sometimes 3 hours of ISS watch, and you'll find just, even in one single night, just all sorts of anomalies that don't make sense. It does look like CG. Normally there's not astronauts out there doing spacewalks. That's, you know, like special events. Normally it's just the ISS flying around, and it's just, it doesn't look real. It looks like they're using some form of trickery. It could be completely fake. It could be different layers of real images. You know, it does sort of look like the same altitude as a weather balloon, so that's very possible. But yeah, there is some fakery going on. And I think you're right. I mean, they put that there so that people can, you know, sort of see what the astronauts are doing. That's good enough for them. Some people really do live vicariously through them. Lots of people want to be astronauts, but it seems like they only allow, and, you know, I've gotten sort of in trouble for saying this, but, you know, I think it's pretty safe to say that just about all spacefaring, spacewalking astronauts are probably members of some secret society bound to secrecy. So even if they wanted to come clean and tell you, they couldn't, or, you know, they'd be gutted and buried at the low tide mark up to their neck and all sorts of crazy stuff that they swear to when they join those clubs for boys.
Oh, sure. We saw that with just the movie with Capricorn 1. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that was a truth-telling movie.
I tried to get that. I ordered it from Netflix, and they didn't. I tried to get it from Netflix. They didn't have it.
I'm going to send you the free link. You can watch it online for free. You don't have to get
okay,
it
I want
on
to
Netflix.
see that, though.
I've watched it twice now, and both times I'm like, man, if I was going to pull it off, this is exactly what I would have done, and nobody be any the wiser.
Does that have O.J. Simpson in it?
Huh?
Does it have O.J. Simpson in it? I thought I saw him on the cover.
Yep.
OJ's in it, yeah.
O.J. and Hal Holbrook. Hal Holbrook is like the leader of the, you know, the NASA guys who, they literally come and sneak them out of the cockpit of the missile, or the whatever you call it, the rocket, and take them out through a tunnel out the back, and away they go, and they're hauled off to a shelter warehouse somewhere in the middle of the nowhere desert, and they're acting like they're landed on the moon or Mars. No, Mars.
To me, part of it seems like, okay, John F. Kennedy promised to put a man on the moon in the decade, right? And it's almost as if they realized they couldn't achieve it, but they had to, you know, continue that narrative. And instead of just admitting to the world, oh, you know, we're failures, Russia can have space, it was a lot easier for them just to fake it. And when you realize things like the Antarctic Treaty are into play here, I mean, for all we know, Russia and the United States are way better buddies than we would ever think, even throughout the entire Cold War. And that what they do is they certainly do monetize our fear, but they also use our own fears against us and exploit those fears, and they do that through mass media outlets, obviously. But it really does fit so nicely, you know, when you finally do realize this thing, that you know, the world seems is a lot safer place than I was always led to believe.
Well, think about this. Okay, so let's say somebody blows their mouth off and says, okay, I think we're going to go to space, and then they realized they can't go to space because they just sent up all these missiles and blew it to Kingdom Come and couldn't get out there. So, okay, here's the deal. You, Russia, you create Sputnik, and you go up there and you create the space race. Okay, now we don't need you to spend any more money than that because we got a lot more money than you do. So, but you create the competition that Americans are so hip about. They love competition. We got to be the most powerful country in the world, and here's how we're going to do it. You create Sputnik and you put it up there in orbit, and then we're going to beat you to the moon. Okay, and all of this is in cahoots, and now we all get to own the prize of saying, you know, outer space and space programs, and it's a way for all of us top guys to siphon money out of the people to spend on space, because you still have ESA, you have RASA, you have, you know, the Chinese now saying they went to the moon.
And all those countries with space programs are on that Antarctic treaty. That's the funny thing.
It's the same group. It's the same bunch, okay? And so it's almost like, you know, I actually made a post about this on Facebook the other day, and it was like, okay, you punk us, and then we'll punk you back, and then that will create the dynamic that we need to get a picture of the Earth from space and say we went to the moon, and then we don't really have to go back there anymore, because that'll be the whole objective, is just to get a picture of the ball taken through the window.
Well, and it's perfect. It really is the perfect plan, because if just suppose that the flat Earth model with the Antarctic around the outside is true. Just suppose it's true for a hypothetical conversation, and suppose there is more land out there. It would be impossible for them to police an entire world full of people from bum rushing it. So they create conditions where we just don't even see any reason to go there, and so it's perfect, you know.
It's perfect. Exactly right. So. Here's part of the other part of what the flat Earth does, and that is it make the flat Earth truth coming out does. It allows them, because now we all know they've got another ploy going on that's been going on for 50 years, and that's aliens and UFOs, right? I mean, they've been playing that game. Oh, it's a UFO. No, it's not. Oh, we had a crash landing. No, we didn't. And punking us along, you know, all these years. Oh, I saw a UFO. No, you saw a weather balloon. And so, you know, there's got to be a reason why they've been going down that road. I mean, why would they go there if they didn't have an end game? Correct?
Yeah. And you've even got, I guess within the last few years, you had that whole, I forget who put it together, but it was basically like the Disclosure Project, and you've even got military personnel, you know, testifying and verifying that UFOs had shut down nuclear facilities. I think it was back in the 60s and 70s, and you know, you've got phenomenon like the Phoenix Lights back in the 90s, where tens of thousands of people saw these things, and to me, I believe that the government possibly could have technologies to hoax these things, but if there were, let's just say there are extraterrestrials coming into our world, then, you know, they would almost have to paint them out to be space aliens, because if they're just coming from next door, then how do we explain that? I mean, that theoretically...
We can't call them extra neighbors. We have to call them extraterrestrials. So, yeah, they're coming from outer space, and they started that whole hoax right about the same time they started the space program.
Yep. Yeah, it's very...
But I don't think there never was a space program. I think from the start they decided to fake the whole thing, and even the Apollo missions, they may well have just filmed all that and shown it later, because, you know, you look at some of the crowds at the shuttle launches, you can see that it's a renter crowd. They're not genuine crowds, and I don't think anybody's actually been in any of these rockets. I think that, you know, if they were real rockets, they were just flown over the sea and recovered later. The astronauts probably flown up in a plane and stuck in a capsule, thrown out with a parachute, and then highish altitude, and they come down and then they just pretend to do whatever they did. But
Well, they
I don't
show
think,
all that in the Capricorn 1 movie. They literally
yeah,
put him in a capsule and dropped him from a helicopter into the drink. And then,
well,
oh,
yeah,
big rescue mission, here we come to, save them out of the water before they all drown. And, then they took him to the warehouse thing, and that's where they enacted being in on Mars. So, I mean, all this kind of stuff is so it costs a lot of money to fake it. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it costs money to fake the moon landings. It costs money to fake the shuttle. They literally had to build these shuttles, and there's another one of those things. If you ever really looked at the shuttle and how it was harnessed to the top of the airplane, and then I mean, really, I believe that.
The predictive programming leading up to the Apollo missions was pretty thick too. I mean, there were lots of space movies and that sort of thing, and so people were very eager to believe it. And it's almost like people wanted to be tricked. I mean, people were so, and even like that astronomer that responded in the second letter that you wrote. They love it. They think it's beautiful, space that they're looking at. They love the idea of it. They're attached to it, and so it's difficult for people like that to let go of it.
Okay, so let's run a scenario here. Okay, the flat Earth continues to grow, more people. And at some point, we hit that tipping point, and it has to be addressed. I mean, there's only so long where the people are going to make fun of NASA and make fun of the space programs and the moon landings and so on, until one day they're just going to go, you know what, enough of this fun. These guys are still spending billions of dollars, and we need it to stop. So let's just say at some point the people decide, and the space program is mostly the Americans and the British and the Europeans, the Western countries with money, and they say, okay, enough. And then they go, all right, you were right, we punked you, we were just kidding. And then what happens? Okay, look at how much information we live with every day that's based on all of these numbers of how this is and how this works, and all the school books and all of the history books and all of the, the astrophysicist guys in the colleges and what they're teaching. Then what happens?
Well, I put in one of my recent videos, who you should really be praying for is out-of-work clowns. But, it's funny that you should mention China is another big one that's, you mentioned they're in the moon. So it's not just necessarily America, Russia, and European countries. China's been, very heavy on their space program, but also very heavy on the propaganda as well. One of the first things that I got about maybe 3 weeks or a month after making my first couple of Flat Earth videos was he worked for some website. It was a Chinese-based website. And basically, they're under the impression, or at least they were 4 or 5 months ago, that this whole flat Earth movement is a cult of basically religious zealots. And when I explained to him that no, that we're just looking at empirical science, he almost tongue-in-cheek said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." But I think China's probably laying it on pretty thick in terms of not just their space program, but also the propaganda and the discrediting of this movement. Just thought I'd get that in there.
Yeah, well, and discrediting, how far can you go with that?
Well, see, that's the thing. People, it can go pretty far. I mean, even open-minded people, if you tell someone, if you get out in front of this thing before they're shown the evidence and basically label this as crazy religious zealots, crazy people, then a lot of people are never going to look at it, or they'll be deterred from looking at it for a good long while. It really does work.
Well, okay, it works to a point, but I have to rely on credibility that I built up for many years in the truth and alternative news sort of aspect of all of this. And it's not like I'm some well-known household name in like Alex Jones or something. But at the same time, I have a following of people, and I belong to a lot of different groups where we discuss all these things. So I know there's a great number of people who would really have to stretch to think that I've gone crazy all of a sudden because I believe the Earth is flat instead of a spinning ball. And so it's not like I'm in the movie Conspiracy Theorist and I'm Mel Gibson and I'm running around going, the people in the tinfoil, and even though tinfoil actually does work, they did a great job making you look like you're really crazy if you line something with tinfoil, because it actually does work.
Right.
But the Hegelian dialectic plan that they created with the problem, reaction, solution, they're so good at that now, where they fake a problem or they name a problem that isn't even there, okay? And then they wait for the reaction and they collect all their metadata. That's why that was so important to, listen in on everybody and read your Facebook inbox and so on and so forth, and collect your phone call information so that they know what the chatter is from what they put out there. That's why they keep putting out there things like Bigfoot or asteroids are going to hit the Earth or whatever, so that they finally can see when, after the 8th time when we've survived a non-asteroid event, then we're probably like, oh, sorry about your asteroids. We're not getting too balled up about it anymore. Then they go to something else. So this reaction part they've collected, now they know what we will and won't buy into. And that's when they come up with their solution. And their solution for the flat Earth phenomenon is already in the can, as far as I'm concerned. We are the metadata collection. They've been watching us. They've been listening to what we say. They know what we know, and they know what we don't know. Okay, and that's why they have these gatekeepers out here telling us what we should think and what we should believe, and people like Lawrence going, I don't think I'm into this map thing. It's like, there's a renegade, there's a dissident, we're going to have to do something about this map thing. They're really starting to question the map we gave them. And so at some point, they've already got the solution. And the solution, in my opinion, is going to be the Fox Network guy with the parka on at the wall, at the dome wall. And they already have a plan for 2016 for an exploration project. They've already got a guy who's going, big talk going on about the 2016 exploration to interior Antarctica, and they're going to find something. I'm 100% convinced already, and if I'm wrong, then I'll take it back. But yeah, it's going to be aliens. It's going to be aliens that they're going to find.
Yeah, you'll probably get some news show coming out saying recent science has shown that the Earth might not be quite the shape we've been told, and you might even get Brian Cox coming on saying, yeah, the Earth span around so fast it flattened into a pancake, and it's now flat. They'll come up with something crazy. And
who's that Brian guy? That other Brian guy who was humiliated for saying that he was in Afghanistan when he actually wasn't there. That news guy. Wasn't his name Brian? Somebody?
Brian Cox, the British guy.
Yeah, and so they'll have somebody like that who is willing to say whatever they tell them to say, because they're going to get a bunch of money. And who knows? They may find everything that was ever gone missing in the Bermuda Triangle. And I don't know. But the point of the thing is we can't let them dictate the outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that we think for ourselves, and we can't just go by what people tell us or what people assert to us. And I say this a lot. Don't even necessarily listen to me. I mean, I don't profess to have all the answers, I mean, there is some clear evidence that, that shows that the Earth is definitely not a spinning globe. But, anyone that has answers for everything, to me, is either lying or it's conjecture. Because, first of all, I don't see any problem with there being mysteries. I like mysteries. I like things being unknown. But it is those unknowns that usually drive us. And for people, NASA's probably guilty of it more than anybody, but for people to come out and say, I have the answer right down to the millionth decimal point, then, in taking that as fact, we're not doing our own research, we're not thinking for ourselves, and we're allowing people, that we've never even met before to dictate how we think. And if there's no other form, no other definition of mind control, then what else is, right?
Well, of course, and the smoother they talk and the more confident they sound, and I don't like to name names, but, Mark Sargent knows exactly how I feel about him because he always likes or comments right away on any video I'm on. Way to go, Lori, keep them talking, yeah. But, he's the perfect example of what a gatekeeper would be like, okay? They're smooth talking, they have an answer for everything, everything's jovial, I don't have a problem with anybody, and same way with Eric Dubay, very confident, very fluent talking style, seems to have a pat answer for everything, seems to have numbers and names and letters in his head. One of the reasons why I think he's rarely on camera and always giving interviews where he shows pictures or something else is because he's looking at his clip notes, he's looking at his notes. Nobody can retain that much information unless you're a freaking robot, all right? And so listening to those people is one thing, but following them is quite another story because gatekeepers will lead you to the rabbit trail that you're designed to go into. And in every aspect of the truth movement that I've been involved in for the last strong 8 years, there's a gatekeeper for everything. There's a gatekeeper for the patriots. There's for the Constitution and let's take this country back. Your Alex Jones guy. There's a gatekeeper for them. There's a gatekeeper for the GMO people, the natural news guy. There's a gatekeeper for the medical industry. There's for every aspect. And the Galactic Federation of Light New Agers. There's a gatekeeper for them. There's multiple gatekeepers for every different type of person's mentality and what they would naturally be drawn to. So why wouldn't there be gatekeepers in the Flat Earth movement? They know we're here. They knew we were coming. And so, to follow anyone, don't even follow me. I don't want any followers. I don't want to be a leader. I can't even tell you how many times they be like, way to lead them, Lori. Way to, organize them, Lori. No. You don't understand. I don't, A, need a bullet in my head. And B, I don't want followers. I want everybody to think for themselves. I want you to ask every question you can possibly come up with. And if you can't figure out the answer for yourself because you're not good at math or you're not good at science or whatever, then ask a bunch of questions and come up with your own, what sounds the best, what resonates the best to you, but no following and no leading, period. Because that's what's going to get us stuck with their outcome.
Yeah,
and don't you find it's ironic that the biggest public figure in Flat Earth that isn't pushing the dome is Matt Powerland? He's the guy going for more land, but having done that, he started doing crazy things like pretending that he's had a death threat and he's got his trousers hanging around his legs, but he's got no blood on his knees. And people are doing videos about him saying it was like the Boston bombings. So I think they've deliberately given him that little section of the flat Earth market, the more land one, because that's the real one, and people won't pay attention to him because he's starting to do crazy things. And
because he's a bonkers actor. Well, why not?
A Facebook page, Laurie, and everything's in block letters, isn't it? He shouts all the time, and he just goes off on a rant and then says, "Everybody come with me, I'm getting a boat to Antarctica. We're going to go there." And, of course, he's got no means of doing it.
Well, okay, so the top three tier, and I've called them the top tier since I got involved in this. Okay, the very first day that I started looking, the first three people that I started looking at their videos were those top three guys: Sargent, Dubé, and Powerland. Okay, and that happened to a whole lot of people that same way. If you want to call them the gatekeepers, whether they know it or not, they could be not even knowing it. Okay, now there's a whole nother psychological rabbit trail for that.
They could just be being used. That's possible. That they're doing it unwittingly, but there's somebody somewhere pulling the strings because they're trying to lead us down a certain path.
Well, the path they want to lead us down is the enclosed dome. There's no doubt in my mind.
You've got all the predictive programming, domes in The Simpsons, the Dome, the movie, and then you've got Rob Skiba the other day. He's doing a big feature on the Truman Show, and he's a dome man,
Well, the thing is too, I like Rob Skiba. I've seen a lot of his work, and he's done some really excellent work. Also, he has a fairly firm biblical knowledge, and so I respect him. But I agree, and even especially people that take the biblical context of the firmament and point to that as evidence of a dome. I've actually pointed this out in one of my recent videos, but it's a mistranslation. The original biblical word that was used was RAQ, rock or rakia, and that just simply means expanse. And during the many translations of biblical texts into English, you wind up with firmament or firmamental, which implies, solid, firm, structurally sound, when in fact all of that is just it's a misunderstanding. It's a misnomer.
Yeah.
So why do you think they would create a dome instead of a spinning ball? And we said this at the beginning, is because it maintains their control from you can't get out. You and I can't get out unless we know how to build a spaceship, right? We can't leave here. And even if we could build a spaceship, we'd smack into something or be repelled back. So we can't get out. So we're prisoners. But we're only prisoners as far up high as we can go. We don't know yet if we're prisoners that way, okay? And if we're not, somebody said, well, wouldn't you just want to get on a high-powered snowmobile and go one way forever and ever until you run into the next thing? Well, yes, but at the same time, wouldn't that be a little bit irresponsible to not know what you're going to run into, because you could carry some germ or whatever, wipe out the entire race of whoever's over there. You wouldn't even know that you could manage to do that, right? So there is a responsibility associated with exploration. We've learned that from our own history already. But
well, that's why I just mentioned Rob Skiba, because with every major conspiracy that comes out, like after 9/11, the perpetrators of what happened, they got their people in setting up the 9/11 internet sites straight away afterwards, so they could lead them in a certain direction. And I think the likes of Rob Skiba, he's in the community now as an agent to give the biblical slant and for him to interpret things in the Bible as appertaining to a dome. That's what I think.
What's really interesting about this biblical versus non-biblical text concept of flat Earth. As a group admin who I've looked at thousands of people's Facebook profiles, thousands, okay? I don't just go, yeah, okay, come on in. I literally go and I look at the person's history and I look at their photos. I see if they're a real person, if they got cartoon characters as their profile. I look and see what groups they belong to. I mean, I look at everything before I let people in. So in doing so, I'm getting a good feel for the kind of people who are coming into Flat Earth. And you know what they are? They're one of every freaking thing.
Yeah.
They're biblical, they're atheists, they're Christians, Muslims, Europeans, they're Africans, they're from all over everywhere, and there is absolutely no thread comparing any of these people that I can find, okay? So it has nothing to do with biblical as far as...
Oh, I know, but they want to put a biblical slant on it, don't they? Because some people will be looking to the Bible for their entrance into flat Earth. So if they've actually got somebody, I mean, I see these people as actors. You know, they may have been said, right, here's a pile of cash. This is what your job is. You push the flat Earth like there's no tomorrow, but you push the slant on it that it's a dome, and that's what I think they're doing. All the big names out there. They're pushing us for the dome because that's the ultimate revelation that they're going to come up with, and we all remain prisoners, and the status quo continues where, you know, the minority control all of us against our will, and we're slaves.
Right.
That's what's happening.
I see that as a pitfall with the enclosed system anyway, is because even if you get everyone to agree that it's a flat stationary plane instead of a spinning globe, but everybody agrees that we're still trapped here, then, you know, what did it change? I think that the main thing that we need to change is ourselves, and to stop, you know, taking these explanations or assumptions, whether it's, you know, somebody's explanation of biblical intentions or somebody's explanation of what goes up must come down, you know, whatever the explanation that you're going to assume as true, we need to stop that, you know, and especially with biblical stuff. I personally am a Christian. I'm not your conventional, typical, you know, Christian in that sense. But, you know, I tend to agree with you, Lawrence, that, you know, anybody that's pushing this as an enclosed system is either not 100% informed, or they are trying to, you know, achieve that end that I just described, which is essentially keep our minds prisoner.
Well, and keep the scarcity going, because if we're in an enclosed system, this is all the resources we have to work with forever.
Yep, indeed, that's very true.
And when you use scarcity as a control mechanism, then you control everything. You control supply and demand, you control value, you control price, and you know, it's the same thing with land. It's always been the same thing with land. From the time I was a little kid, my grandpa used to say, before you do anything, you save your money up and you buy yourself a piece of property, okay? Because they're not making any more land. And that's, you know, that did stick in my head, the value of property, until I realized that you actually never, ever get to own your own property, because if you don't pay taxes, they jerk it away from you, and so too bad.
Or maybe they
foreclosure or
the reason, Laurie, you know, because well, these people that run the world, the Illuminati or whatever term you want to give to them, they own everything already. They own everything, all the land, all the businesses, all the shares, all the bonds, all the money. They've got it all, everything. You know, they've got enough money to live 1,000 lifetimes, some of them. You know, they're sat on trillions of dollars. So there must be some other reason that they want to keep us here. And Stargod's put a video out the other day, and he's postulating that these people, they feed on our negative emotions resulting from the way that we mistreated. So you've got everybody in a state of stress with their day-to-day lives, giving off negative emotions. You're caught in the traffic jam and you're smashing the steering wheel, you know, and life's just all stress, and the stress that we have produces negative feelings which go out there. And maybe these people, they absorb them in some way, and it's their energy form. They did put this stuff out in that children's cartoon called Monsters, Inc., and that's the one where they, you know, they terrify the children at night, and the monsters feed off the screams of the children, or something like.
And then Tuesdays we just watch the ISS and talk about all sorts of stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Is that like Mystery Science Theater? Do you guys like laugh and stuff?
I love that show, but that'd be a funny way to do a couple of them. But no, not exactly like Mystery Science Theater, but sort of.
Okay.
And
All right, and
working on a video right now. I'll have that out probably up by tomorrow or so, maybe Tuesday. So check that out too.
very cool. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the USA. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Night.
Premise, only instead of the energy thing, you know, they using our electric energy and our blood and our whatever to raise their machine critters or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I've thought about all that too, and I lean on the energy thing myself, because I know when I get caught in their system, whatever it is, whether I'm standing in the line at the post office and all I want to do is, you know, buy a stamp or pick up a letter, and I'm going to wait there with all the other goobers, or if I'm stuck at a stoplight and nobody's coming in any other direction anywhere, and I'm in my car making the Incredible Hulk, "Rah! Green means go, let's go." And you know, yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, because there's so many times, like sitting there at the stoplight, where I'm thinking, you know, I'm not an engineer at all, but I could figure this crap out better than these guys can. It's like, flow the traffic. What is the matter with you people? You bitch at us for using up too much oil, but then you make us sit here and go nowhere. So
I think they time the red light cycles in America to make sure you waste as much gas as possible.
No doubt, and as much time. And the red lights are always at the corners where the merchants buy, consume. And so, yeah, I don't doubt that has to be some element to it. But also never forget that most of these people are literally psychopaths and sociopaths, and they do get a rush out of controlling people's lives and owning everything and the power that is associated with it. And that bloodline that they're always talking about, there's got to be something to that, because these people keep interbreeding to keep that same bloodline going. So there has to be some power thing associated with that as well. So, yeah, if I wanted to be in control of everyone and just wanted to suck up their energy, yeah, I'd want to create as many humans as I could and pack them in as tight of spaces as I could. I certainly wouldn't want zero population growth. I certainly wouldn't want negative population growth. I would want more people. I would want billions more people, which is what seems to be happening. I mean, the population is expanding to the degree of very rapid, okay? Even though bunches of people are dying early because of the diseases that they're giving us. So it's some kind of a screwed up game. It's a game.
These people, though, they are cold fish. They lack all compassion. They are psychopaths. They don't care about us. They're poisoned. Everybody's been poisoned to a greater or lesser degree by, the environment, the food, the water, and everything else.
Damn good and well, there's enough different kinds of energy that we could have that we would never have to pull another drop of oil out of the ground or dig another ounce of coal out of a mountain. And yet it's all suppressed. It's all kept, away from us. The prices of solar never came down. I mean, solar stuff. I just bought a little stick in the ground solar yard light thing the other day for $5. Okay, it had a rechargeable battery in it. It had a little round top on it. It had a little solar cell thing and a little plastic thing from China. And a little stake, and you stick it in the ground. It costs $4.98, and I bought it at the Home Depot. And I thought, I'm going to see. I got a couple of path places I'd like to light these so that when I walk around at night, that'd be cool. And $5. So if this thing can charge all day long and then run all night long, a little bitty battery about that big. Why are we still driving gas guzzler cars? Why are we still getting oil out of anywhere?
Well, I mean,
And
especially when we've had, diesel engines that were designed to run on peanut oil for decades and decades and decades. You've got guys like Tom Ogle and Stan Meyer that developed carburetors that can run on water vapor instead of gas at all. And so it really is everything, whether it's the environment, that all comes down to petrodollars. Is it going to make the fat cats richer? If so, then it's good. If not, then we have to, squash it. But then, even like the medical industry, it's all about money, and that's why it's so sick, and that's why these people knew they had to control our money first, and that's exactly what they did. Even in 1913, once they have control over the money, corruptible men are corruptible, especially with lots of money dangled in their face and blackmail and secret oaths. So it doesn't seem like it's sustainable, but somehow they've managed to keep it sustainable because everybody strives towards that same end. And yeah, it's ridiculous though. I mean, solar power is one alternative. It is expensive for lots of different reasons, but there's other things other than solar that yeah, we don't need. I don't think we need fossil fuels.
there's 3 little girls in Africa a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that invented an electric battery that runs off of urine. You collect urine and you feed urine into this, and it makes some kind of hydroelectric something out of urine. Well, we know that is a sustainable resource forever. So, but do you think anybody funded these 3 little African girls to make, millions of these to go in everywhere? No. So anyway, if scarcity is the ploy, if negative energy collection is the ploy, it's whatever it is, it's not what I'm into. It's not what any of us are into. We didn't choose this game. We were born into this game. It would be like being born into Hunger Games, okay? Once you're there, what are you going to do? I mean, you're already there. So what I hope that comes out of this thing is eventually people find their freaking backbone, and they find their independence, and they find their, you can live by rules but not rulers, and all these laws and layers of administrative and authoritative people and all that stuff. There's, obviously all these people aren't required. They don't even need jobs. They can do everything they want to do now with some kind of McDonald's style system for everything. But do they? No, because they have to have a certain small percentage of jobs so that people will never figure it out, that they don't actually need us to do hardly any of this work, that it's just make work kind of stuff. And the people who have figured out how to sustain themselves without getting in the car and driving on the freeway and doing the green light at the red light and everything else, who've checked out of the system and gotten off the grid and gotten off the treadmill, they're happy people. For the most part. I mean, they're not just like hippie, lazy, live in a commune kind of people. They're very they're making decent money, and they've got things going on, and they're creating sustainable jobs for other people. All that. So if you watch a little bit of Larkin Rose, and you watch a little bit of Stefan Molyneux, and you watch a little bit about how anarchy can truly work, then you will lose a whole lot of the fear that you have that's keeping you trapped on the spinning ball or in the enclosed world. So
yeah, to me, they clearly want a lot of people, but they also want a lot of people that are afraid of, every shadow, afraid of even their neighbors. And even in my lifetime, I'm just in my mid-30s, and I've seen it go from, and I guess, you've got different places are different cultures, but it used to be different. I mean, is it just me that 20 years ago people seemed to be friendlier? Or I was watching a flat Earth video. I just thought it was so funny because it was so true, and I forget who it was. I want to say it was Tiger Dan 925, but I could be mistaken. But he said he was at the beach, and he went out into the water, and he just had he got stung by all these jellyfish, and he rushed out of the water, and there was 20 people on the beach he didn't know. And he told them, he was like, don't go in there, there's all kinds of jellyfish in there. And they're like, oh yeah, we knew there were jellyfish there.
Oh, no kidding, and they let him go in there?
Right, but that's sort of how it's become, and it's just everywhere. It's just like people are so, I don't know, they're just so paranoid, or they're just so isolated, and it just seems like people have changed.
Yeah, because they're all going like this.
Right, yeah. Right. Exactly.
Well, listen, I'm old, okay? So I grew up in Andy and Mayberry days, all right? So you want to talk about changes in your lifetime. I mean, I used to get on my bicycle. I was what is now considered a free-range child, okay? They actually call people like the way I grew up, where you could get on your bicycle and go in the neighborhood and go play with your friends and go wherever, and as long as you were home by the time the street light came on for dinner, that was your childhood.
And as long as you snuck out the window quietly later.
Right. And you came home drunk in high school, and as long as you didn't trip up the stairs and wake up the rents, then you were okay, right? Yep. Okay. So I literally one day was looking for an old Andy of Mayberry episode to show it to somebody, and it was the one about Andy or Opie and his little friend were no, it was Beaver. Leave it to Beaver. And they were going to go fishing one morning, okay? And they got up early, and they got their fishing gear, and they just literally walked out of the house and took off and walked down to the lake and went fishing. And I'm like, wow, today you'd have to have, the parents and a play date and permission and a fishing license and everything else. You just can't go free ranging around and doing whatever you want to do, and because bad people are after you, can kill you. And yeah, that happens periodically, but my gosh, if you have any sense at all and you go look up, okay, this terrorism thing is completely out of control. ISIS is getting ready to tear down my door any second and come in and rob and pillage and plunder and chop my head off and put it on TV. Okay, that could happen tomorrow. And I think, what's the point? What are we even here? Shoot me. I mean, this sucks. I don't want to live like this. This is dumb. Well, I was going to say it's funny too, because you're so right. And even I grew up in the 80s, and I probably was considered a free roaming child in the early 90s, and you just take it for granted, and you interact with people, and you go outside and enjoy the world, and maybe you watch a little TV and cartoons on the weekends, but it really has. I mean, it's gotten to the point to where children are, that they're almost robbed of their childhood, and instead of being, sort of raised in social environments with other people, they're very much isolated and raised by, SpongeBob SquarePants instead. Exactly. And what's interesting when you say that? I have people in my group, parents with children in my group, who, every once in a while, one of them will say something like, my kid came home from school and told me what they were being taught at school today, and I don't know what to do. I know what they're being taught are lies, and I need to have the flat chat with them and start to explain to them that they're being lied to and so on and so forth. But I'm afraid because I don't want my kids taken away, because I'm, a bad parent, and I'm telling them that the Earth is flat, and the teacher's gonna say, your parent said what? And then I get called into the office for a parent, teacher, principal, and spin the whole thing out. You know what happens. And
honestly, if I had children, I would probably be forced at this point in my life. I don't have any children, but I would be forced to homeschool them, just simply because I see what the federal education system is, and it really is a mechanism of this very same group of people that really, it doesn't teach us things. It just teaches us the way that they want us to view the world. And so, you know, I understand the benefits to public schooling, and you can't, not everyone has time to homeschool or to private school their children. And, you know, again, I don't have any children, so I'm just sort of blowing it out my rear. But I would be very hard-pressed to send, you know, my children off to a federal school. And for those very reasons, I mean, they do have that power. I mean, if you teach your children an alternative way of thinking, even if you don't tell them, you know, hey, it's a flat Earth, you know, let them experiment with it, show them different evidence, and let them decide what the, you know, what model they like. But even that could get you into very deep trouble. And you're right. I mean, it's scary. But I think the more people who are, you know, sort of aware of this, then we can start to work on the problem. But awareness has to come first.
Well, there was a video that I watched last week of a man and his daughter who made the video together. She was probably 10 or 12, maybe 9, I don't know. And he was, you know, middle-aged dad. And they talked about the education system and about question everything and critical thinking and so on. And they had a little script, and they did really good. He said this and she said that, and you know, they talked about flat Earth and the powers that be and all that kind of stuff, and it was very refreshing. But the parents that are teaching their children about flat Earth are having to tell them, you need to keep this here in the house and the family, you know. It's like if your parents smoked pot when you were growing up and you knew about it, you know, back in my day, the parents told you, you know, you don't need to be going and telling anybody that your parents smoked pot, and well, can I smoke some too? That'd be cool. So everybody's raised a little bit differently, but at the same time, you know, there is a point where your own credibility with your child is gonna come into question. If you know something and you're not telling them, and you're letting this lie get perpetuated into another generation. So there's all kinds of issues going on with this. I mean, I know people who are vowing that they won't date anybody who isn't a flat earther. You know, I have friends who say that they, you know, they're getting a divorce, sadly, because their spouse, they're a 100% flat earther, and their spouse is calling them crazy, and it's broken up their marriage. They've grown apart over the flat Earth, and so yeah, we're in a dilemma, and it's going to take a little while for it to work itself out. But
it's a strange situation as well, because like my daughter, my youngest daughter's 18 years old now. When she was 9, which was about 2005, she came home from school. She says, "Dad, I'm doing a school project. What shall I do? They've asked me to do a project." So I said, "Why don't you do one of the fake moon landings?" So she did it, and you know, she got all the stuff and did a big montage with the footprint of the astronaut on the moon, which couldn't be possible because there was no moisture. And they put this in the school entrance hall. So she knows all about that. She knows about chemtrails, but she ain't having the flat Earth. And then I've got a niece of mine.
She's not interested in the flat Earth.
Well, because they won't look at it. And my niece, she stood up she was in class a couple of years ago, and the teacher made an announcement saying that they would all be getting the HPV vaccine the following week. And my niece stood up and said to the teacher, "I won't be having it, miss, because it's full of toxic ingredients, and the main purpose of this vaccine is to make me infertile. I won't be having it." And that was it. And then my sister, you know, my niece's mother, you know, she was getting grief off the school nurse ringing up as to why she wouldn't have the vaccine. But they're not buying into the flat Earth, though. So they know some things are big lies, but for some, the flat Earth is just one step too far. So we're not going to get everybody over. We're going to get some. It's those who are really inquisitive and saying, "What's all the fuss about?" But if stuff keeps coming up on Facebook and it's in your face every day, eventually you'll think, "What's the fuss about it? I'm just going to have a quick look at it." And you know, some people are going to look at it and think, they've got a point here, and then they'll dig a bit deeper, and then they'll get into it, and you know, more people are going to find out about it. It's a question of, you know, how soon it's going to reach a critical mass, and we're going to get some traction out of it. But that's what the appeal is, to stay in with this, because it's a solution to all the problems. I want to see the end to the power structure that we have, and we become free again, and you know, we live the life we were supposed to lead, because it's a horrible world that we live in. It's very nice for some, the privileged few who've got all the money, and you know, they can live in the nice places and they don't have to work. But for some, it's just a life of misery, and you know, who would choose that? So you know, we need to do. We are the resistance, aren't we? You know,
we are.
Us flat earthers speaking out of the resistance. You know, and some of the people speaking out their false resistance. You know, we are the genuine resistance. We haven't got an agenda other than for the truth to get out, and hopefully to bring about a better world. That's what we want. You know, other people will be saying that, but you know, they're probably being paid money. They're actors, and they've got an agenda. So this is a battle that's going to rage for quite some time, and I would imagine that the powers that be knew all this was going to come along. They had the Illuminati card. They were planting clues in Back to the Future, and making all these movies. They knew this was coming. Their people are out there now amongst us. They're on Facebook groups. They're running YouTubes against us with a different agenda. And we're the ones who, you know, we're responsible for trying to get the real truth out and get the result we want. But it's a tall order to achieve it, you know. But all you can do is try.
Well, you know, even more so than getting the truth out, I think it's important to get people back to thinking for themselves. And you know, if we can present evidence that disproves what people believe that they know, then you know, maybe, and sort of my goal in all this has just been, you know, very humble from the beginning. You know, if I can just get a couple of people that were globe earthers to, you know, to look at this and to maybe come to the same conclusion that I have, maybe not. But at least to get them to look at it, then I feel like, you know, that's mission accomplished. And you know, I've probably helped lots of people to look at this and to consider it without just snubbing it. We were all globe earthers once, and you know, I think it's sad that, you know, a relationship or a marriage would get broken up over this. But you know, sometimes you don't know a person's true colors until you really start to attack their belief system or question their belief system. And it's very hard for scientific people to come to terms with the fact that their belief system is very closely akin to a religious belief, just based on all of the assumptions that they have to take as fact in order to, you know, to have their position.
Well, that same thing happened with 9/11 truthers. It happened with vax versus anti-vax. You know, GMOs, chemtrails, all kinds of things. I know, you know, I have friends who cannot mention certain things in front of their spouse or their family because it creates, you know, a crazy backlash. But the upside is, I'm gonna read something really quick from a friend of mine that I worked on for months to become involved in the flat Earth, and he says. Finally, he says, by the way, I love the flat Earth topic. For once, it sucks. It sucks, another huge deception, maybe the biggest ever, but for once, we don't have to think about people dying and shit. It would be just so cool to learn the truth. Eventually, exposing the liars, of course, will be a goal, but just the unity I think a worldwide realization of a flat Earth might bring could be so positive. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think flat Earth can make you so happy if true. I hope and tend to believe that it is true. And he says, I'm already happier knowing what I know. For once, I'm not frustrated not knowing everything. There are assholes in this, just like in life in general, but somehow you know they aren't why you're doing this, and they don't matter. If they have an ego about getting credit for thinking of something or a discovery they've made, they are quickly set aside as narcissistic and not followed anymore. Then there are the fakey nice ones who also know they will bite you as soon as you turn around. I thought 9/11 would be the straw that broke the New World Order's back, but then maybe it would be Sandy Hook. But nothing compares to this. The space program is a black hole of trillions of dollars. The science fields and academia are all based on lies and will be laughed at. All the books and teaching tools will all have to be thrown out and rewritten. It's epic. I want to be standing in the front of the crowd with a smile on my mug the size of a dinner plate when the people realize the massive lie and control they have been living under for centuries. But mostly in my lifetime has this lie been blown so big with the space program. And he goes on, but that's where you say, you know what? That's what I think, and that's what other people think once they learn about this. And sooner or later, people are going to see that we've changed, that we're different, that we're not the same people we were a few years ago before we knew this. I, for one, am happier. I used to worry. I used to be on Facebook fretting about the banksters and the war and the Zionists and all these people. And that's another word, Zionists. They crammed that down our throat for 10 years, over and over and over, the Zionists, the Zionists, the Zionists. And it's no wonder everybody got to the point where it's the Zionists. And it's like, who are the Zionists? You don't even know who they are. It's this word with a Z. You don't even know. They're no different. Why do you think it's okay to call them the Zionists when, you're stupid if you call them the Illuminati? There's no Illuminati. They don't exist. That's just a name. Hello, it's the same thing. But all of a sudden now, I'm not balled up about those people anymore. I just know that there's a way to bring them down, and this is it. And as far as I'm concerned, this is it. If I'm wrong and another 15 years goes by, like 9/11, well, then so be it. I'll be really old then. But if I can do anything to help stop this and make people stop and look and listen and think independently and question everything and not believe people just automatically, then my life will be complete.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal scenario is that if you've watched the V for Vendetta movie, I mean it's got similarities to 1984 in that you've got a totalitarian government who control every aspect of your life. So the best end game is where you get all the people, turning up in hundreds of thousands outside Parliament buildings or the White House and just literally physically overthrowing those in power and say, that's it, enough's enough, we're taking back charge of our lives and this world that we live in, you're out and we're going to start again. And that's what we need. That's the end game for me, because this is a terrible place that we live in. It's okay for some of us, because we live in the Western world and we still have, money and food and stuff like that. But there's so many people who I mean, there was a program on India the other day, and there's children in India. They're actually born in the gutter and they live their entire life like under a bridge, and they sleep on a rug. That's their entire life, and we allow this to go on. It's just, it's not acceptable, is it, in a modern society where, you've got so many poor people who can barely afford to feed themselves.
There's people who are born, raised, and die living next to a trash dump, and their whole life they spend
you've got that in America.
Looking for plastic.
How many people in America, Larry? How many Americans now in your country are actually living in their cars or in tent cities in fields and things like that? You're talking hundreds of thousands, aren't you?
Yeah, there's a tent. I live in outside of Greenville, South Carolina, and there's a tent city underneath one of the bridges or out by one of the overpasses, and there's lots of people. I mean, it has an east side and a west side. It's not just a few people in tents. It's like a lot of people. And, it's so bizarre. I don't think that we were intended to live like this. And what I mean is, scientific advances, especially, I always point to Nikola Tesla because he had inventions and schematics and concepts that could have improved the quality of life for everybody, so that really, less and less people have to work to enjoy the fruits of modern society. But these people at the top have decided that it's better for them to monetize everything and keep us under control with their fiat currency systems, that you know, that's how they've done it. And they've done a pretty good job of it, and in getting people to sort of think outside the box and think for themselves, and to not just go with all these preconceived acceptances. Then you know, we can start getting 100,000 people to march on the Federal Reserve. That would be great.
That I think that's going to be accelerated, you know, where you are and where we are, because we're pretty much the same as you are. In the UK, everybody lives from one paycheck to the next. So if they lose their job and then they foreclose on your house, you're forced to go and live in your car, or if you have a car or a mobile home, or you go and pitch a tent up somewhere. But the numbers are just getting ridiculous. You can walk in any town centre in the UK and you see people with a rucksack with their sleeping bag in, and they literally sleep in shop doorways under a cardboard box, and this is their entire life. And during the day, they drink strong beer to get through the day.
With more vacant, foreclosed houses than there are homeless people.
Yeah, there's huge numbers of empty properties and shops that have got, you know, accommodation over the top, but it's not used. So yeah, squatting's
and add this in there. When the foreclosure thing started, when the crash happened in 2007, 2008, and the media people were, you know, oh, you terrible people who overspent or overbought and so on and so forth, they set up a dialogue that made you ashamed to fight the banksters. They set up a scenario where they created this, you know, rocket docket courts where if you didn't have a lawyer, if you didn't know how to fight their system, 60 days and your house is gone, and somebody comes and moves you out. And the house right next door to me sat empty for 2 years just now, empty. And they finally came and fixed it up. And they're going to sell it. So I guess some investors finally bought it or whatever. It was a foreclosure, but they made it so shameful to be a foreclosure person, you know. And on top of that, there was no system set up to help any of these people. They had these HARP funds and these TARP funds and so on and so forth. But sorry, you don't fit the criteria. Sorry, you make too much money. Sorry, you know, you don't have the right kind of mortgage that fits into this. And I studied it for like 5 years. My house went into foreclosure in 2009, early 2010, and I'm still in it because I'm fighting, because they tried to steal my house. And it wasn't for lack of wanting to pay the mortgage. It was because a lot of reasons, but I applied for a modification loan, and I was immediately turned down, and before I could even blink an eye, I was foreclosed on. So, you know, I don't play that game. I was raised where, you know, if you take out a mortgage, you borrow money, you pay it back. And they made it to where I couldn't pay it back. They made it to where I had to fight them.
Well, and the most important part of propaganda or psyops is to demonize the victim, and you know, that's how wars are fought. You know, that's how people are foreclosed on. And yeah, you're right. They almost made it as if, you know, the people who were getting foreclosed on were the problem. But in fact, it was obviously predatory lending. It was obviously, you know, stacking these properties up into bonds and trading them worldwide when they were really not that good investments. So yeah, there was a lot of fault to lay there, really the least of which was on the people that were sort of duped into taking those awful, you know, adjustable rate mortgages, and, you know, obviously didn't make enough money to pay the mortgage, and yeah, that was the problem.
Well, not only that, but look at it this way, okay? When the crash happened in 2008, and people don't call it crash, you know, but it was a crash, okay? And then they came out with the whole big Paulson story about, oh, we got to bail out the banks and we got to give them billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and so on and so forth, or the entire global system is going to shut down and it will be epic, okay? And so the people the values of the houses all went underwater, okay? And there were a whole lot of people who said, you know what, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. My payment is based on the value of what my house was when I got it, and now my house is worth half that. This payment could get me rent on 2 different apartments, this same payment for this underwater house. So I would actually be dumb to make this payment if the house value is not going to come back up for 3, 4, 5 years, okay? And that's exactly what happened. It's just now starting to, you know, sort of come back up, and it's all fake because these investors are going out and buying all of these houses and fixing them up and making them rentals, and they're, you know, making the, I mean, I could talk about this alone for 14 hours straight.
Yeah.
The deal is that the same method is used over and over and over again to make people feel, you know, the victims to feel like they screwed up, and it's their fault. Okay, it wasn't the fault of the banks. It wasn't the fault of the fake money system. It wasn't the fault of they overinvested and they divided and you know, sold the same derivatives 15 times over. And you guys just, sorry, too bad, that shit happened and we really feel bad about it, but now you need to bail us out. And then we're going to take the bailout money and we're going to pay ourselves a whole bunch of, you know, extra money this year as a bonus, and on and on and on. And the whole while, people are sitting there going, what the hell just happened?
And well, then the key part is, though, is right back to business as usual as it was before, right?
No laws were changed. Nobody went to jail. Da 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 da. Right? And so people basically turned into sitting ducks. They got on antidepressants. They lost their jobs. They lost their homes. They lost all this stuff. They're living with their parents in the basement. I mean, it goes on and on and on into the horror story. So it's no different in any other country that has the same banking system. This whole same scenario happens easily. Unless you're Iceland. Now, if you live in Iceland, you go, you know what, banksters? Bite me. We're going to nationalize the banks, and we're going to take the money system back, and we're going to, you know, adjust people's mortgages, and we're going to adjust people's home values, and we're going to do it right. And the whole world ignored the whole thing because nobody talked about it. And Iceland now has the highest growth, like 2, 3, 4% annual growth or whatever. Okay, is that sort of socialism or communism or whatever? It kind of could lean that way, but at the same time, what was their alternative? Be Greece? Okay. So yeah, this flat Earth thing is tied to all of that, because it isn't about the shape of the world. It's about the fact that people are waking up and asking questions, and that's what's key. And I hope they ask questions until the cows come home.
Yeah, indeed.
Indeed.
Okay, guys. I think we'll wrap it up. We're at like 3 hours almost. So
That long.
it's been a huge pleasure on my part. I hope as well for you guys. So anything you want to say on the way out the door?
Yeah, I'll try and get some more information for next week, Laurie. I've been busy with my own little business. I've had quite a lot of orders this week, so I've been sort of sidetracked a bit. But I will try and get some more talking points of interest to brainstorm a little bit and see where we're going with this.
Sounds awesome. Jonathan, will you be back with us next week?
I will, God willing. I'll plan on it, and
okay, awesome.
I will definitely plan on hanging out with you guys again next week, same time. And if any of your viewers want to check out my YouTube channel, it's the Morgile, TheMorgile, the Morgile. And also, I'm on live Mondays and Tuesdays on the Glowbusters channel with Jeranism. Mondays is Glowbusters Live. Sometimes we'll have a guest, sometimes not. And then Tuesdays, we just watch the ISS and talk about all sorts of stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Is that like Mystery Science Theater? Do you guys like laugh and stuff?
I love that show, but that'd be a funny way to do a couple of them. But no, not exactly like Mystery Science Theater, but sort of.
Okay.
And
all right, and
working on a video right now. I'll have that out probably up by tomorrow or so, maybe Tuesday. So check that out too.
Very cool. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the USA. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Night.
Night.